Hello everyone and welcome to this explainer. I am super thrilled to have you here today. Whether you're a grade 10 science student diving into the MATATAG curriculum, or honestly just a curious learner wanting to figure out the actual mechanics of life on Earth, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to unpack a step-by-step guide on exactly how life changes, diversifies, and survives over time, pulling directly from our science study guides. We're going to build this logical framework together piece by piece so we can see exactly how evolution operates out there in the real world.
But first, I want to kick things off by asking you a really simple yet kind of profound question. Why don't all living things look exactly the same? Seriously, think about it for a second. Even siblings born to the exact same parents have different traits. Even identical-looking mangoes plucked from the exact same branch of a single tree have slight differences in their weight or color or shape. This whole mystery of differences, it isn't just some random quirk of nature. It's actually the absolute foundation of everything we're going to talk about today. To solve that mystery, we'll be following a clear 4-step mechanism today. Step 1, the raw materials. Step 2, the filter and upgrade. Step 3, the Great Divide. And finally, Step 4, the chain of evolution. All right, let's jump right into Step 1, the raw materials, which covers variation and heredity. Our very first pillar here is variation. Variation simply refers to the differences in traits that exist among individuals of the exact same species. So, where does this come from? Well, it mostly arises from sudden random changes in our DNA sequences, we call those mutations, as well as the natural shuffling of genes that happens during reproduction, which is known as gene recombination. And let me tell you, variation is absolutely crucial. Imagine a world where every single human being had the exact same immune system. If a single novel virus came along that our identical immune systems couldn't fight, well, our entire species could literally be wiped out overnight. Variation ensures that while some individuals might be vulnerable, others will survive. It's the essential raw material for evolution. Now, variation generally falls into 2 distinct buckets. First up, we have continuous variation. These are traits that show a really wide, gradual range of values with absolutely no sharp categories. Think of human height or skin tone. This type of variation is usually controlled by many different genes and is heavily influenced by the environment. The second bucket is discontinuous or discrete variation. These fall into strict, separate categories with absolutely no in-between. You either have type A, B, AB, or O blood. You either have attached earlobes or free earlobes. There's no middle ground there. And I think this brilliantly illustrates continuous variation in the real world. If you've ever walked into the bustling carbon market in Cebu and looked at a basket of mangoes, you've seen this. You'll see a spread of sizes. Some are oblong, some are rounder. Some have this deep golden hue, while others have a slight green tint. Even though they are the exact same variety from the exact same orchard, their genetics and the environmental growing conditions, things like sunlight and soil nutrition, create this beautiful, continuous spectrum of variation. But here's the catch. Having all this awesome variation doesn't mean much for the future if those traits just disappear when the organism dies, right? And that brings us to our second gear, which is heredity. This is the biological transmission of genetic traits from parents to offspring. Thanks to the foundational work of Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, we know that traits are coded in our DNA as genes. Without heredity, a really fantastic new trait caused by a random mutation wouldn't get passed down. So for evolution to occur, advantageous variations absolutely must be heritable. Moving on to part 2, the filter and the upgrade, looking at selection and adaptation. So what acts on all these raw materials? A filter, famously known as natural selection, a concept proposed by Charles Darwin. Here's the deal. Because environments have limited resources, organisms produce way more offspring than can possibly survive, which creates a very real struggle for existence. Natural selection is the process where nature acts as an active filter. Individuals who just happen to have traits best suited to their specific environment are much more likely to survive and, most importantly, reproduce. We often hear this summarized as the survival of the fittest. Essentially, nature is constantly selecting what works best. Let's picture a highly visual example to make this concrete. Imagine a field of lush green grass containing a population of grasshoppers. Because of natural variation, some grasshoppers are green and some are brown. Now, when predatory birds fly overhead looking for a quick meal, which ones are they going to spot easily? The brown ones, for sure. The green grasshoppers blend right into the environment. So the birds swoop down, eat the brown grasshoppers, and that leaves the green ones to survive longer and have more babies. Over several generations, the population will shift to be overwhelmingly green. Nature didn't consciously design them to be green, it simply filtered out the brown ones. So the crucial point here is this. The resulting upgrade from this continuous process of natural selection is called an adaptation. An adaptation is a heritable trait that specifically enhances an organism's ability to survive and reproduce in its particular environment. It's the direct, tangible outcome of nature's rigorous filtering process. And adaptations generally come in three forms. Structural adaptations are physical features. Think of the incredibly thick fur of an Arctic polar bear, or the massive, powerful wings of the Philippine eagle. Physiological adaptations are internal body processes, like a snake's ability to produce venom. And finally, behavioral adaptations are actions, like birds migrating south for the winter. A fantastic example right here in the Philippines is the whale shark, or batinding, down in Oslav, Cebu. They rely on an amazing physiological adaptation to filter feed on tiny plankton, paired with a behavioral adaptation that drives them to gather in those nutrient-rich coastal waters. All right, let's step into part 3, the Great Divide, focusing on isolation and speciation. So, what is the ultimate catalyst for creating a completely brand new species? It's isolation. This happens when a single population is separated into groups that can no longer freely interbreed. When the gene flow between these groups is cut off, they stop sharing genetic material entirely. It's like hitting a wall. They are now on completely independent evolutionary paths, accumulating their own unique mutations and adapting to totally different environmental pressures over time. There are two main ways this isolation happens. The first is geographic or spatial isolation. This is a literal physical barrier, like a new mountain range forming, a river changing its course, or populations getting separated by an ocean across an archipelago. The second is reproductive isolation. In this case, there isn't a physical wall between them, but biological barriers stop them from mating. This could be temporal isolation, where maybe they just breed during different seasons. Or it could be behavioral, like having completely mismatched courtship rituals. Basically a really bad first date. It can even be post-zygotic, meaning they do mate, but the resulting offspring is sterile, kind of like a mule. Now, I absolutely love this next slide because it's an incredible local story, the Batangas Tuilas. Long ago, the ancestors of the Tuilas were actually just regular saltwater sardines. But centuries ago, volcanic eruptions from the tall volcano physically cut off their marine environment, creating an enclosed lake. This was a massive geographic isolation event. Trapped in what was rapidly becoming fresh water, well, a lot of them didn't survive. But those with variations allowing them to tolerate less salt, they survived, reproduced, and adapted. Today, the Tuilas is a distinct species, literally the world's only freshwater sardine. Even if you scoop them up and put them back in the ocean with their ancestors today, they would no longer interbreed. And that incredible transformation? That is the exact definition of speciation. When isolated groups are separated long enough, natural selection and genetic changes push them so far apart that they become fundamentally incompatible with each other. They accumulate enough distinct traits that they graduate, essentially, and are officially recognized as an entirely new species. Finally, let's wrap this up with part 4, the chain of evolution, putting it all together. Let's zoom out and see how everything we just talked about builds our complete evolutionary chain. It all starts with step 1, variation. That's what supplies the genetic differences and the raw materials. Then comes step 2, heredity, which ensures these varied traits can actually be passed down to the next generation. Sometimes step 3 comes into play, isolation, which acts as a wedge to separate populations and stop them from mixing their genes. And finally, step 4, adaptation, is the ultimate outcome. It's driven by natural selection, fitting organisms perfectly to their unique environments, and, eventually, creating brand new species. Okay, let's pause for a quick knowledge check based on what we've learned so far. Imagine a scenario where a massive paved highway is built straight through the middle of a dense forest. It completely divides a population of forest frogs into 2 groups, and they can no longer cross the road to meet each other. Which mechanism from our chain is actively at work here? Think about it for a second. If you said geographic isolation, you hit the nail right on the head. By physically separating the frogs, that highway cuts off gene flow, completely setting the stage for those 2 frog populations to evolve independently over the coming centuries. To summarize our whole journey today, I want to leave you with this absolutely perfect quote straight from our study materials. Variation gives organisms something to select from, heredity passes it on, isolation lets populations diverge, and adaptation is the outcome. This single sentence just perfectly encapsulates the magnificent, unceasing machinery of life on our planet. It's the whole shebang. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder the next time you look at the world around you. This chain of evolution, it isn't just some ancient history that happened millions of years ago. It is happening constantly, right now in real time. With shifting climates, expanding cities, and entirely new environments popping up, what future treats do you think nature is selecting for right now? Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating topic today. Keep observing, keep questioning, and keep learning.